Welcome this evening to the City Council Successor Agency to the Redevelopment Agency Housing Authority regular meeting. It is August 8th. Will you please join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, are there any changes to the order of the agenda this evening?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The staff would like to remove item 6K, which is the adoption of the new child care ordinance from this agenda so that we can make some tweaks to language to be more in compliance with the spirit of the motion at introduction that was made with the council. So that item would be back in 2 weeks.
Very good, thank you. Any other changes to the order of the agenda from my colleagues this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, council communications and announcements. These are brief items from members of the City Council regarding upcoming events in the community and correspondence that they have received. Would anyone like to share an announcement this evening? Councilmember Dugan?
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate that. Yeah, just a quick note. Was in the city booth yesterday with Park and Rec, Amy and Emma, and just what a fantastic farmers market we had yesterday. It was probably the best farmers market of as far as attendance goes on both the vendor and people of San Carlos that I've seen in some time. So I just, was, we seem to have really embraced the movement of our farmers market back to Laurel Street. So just wanted to report out on that.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. Crystal, would you mind coming over for just a second? I can't seem to get my menu thing working for speakers. Thank you. Any other members of council wish to make an announcement? Okay, I just wanted to say a big thank you to our Parks and Rec department. I attended our last Friday concert in the park, and it was packed, like all of our summer concerts were, and I think they just did a tremendous job. So I'd like to thank our staff with Parks and Rec and also the Parks and Rec Foundation that helped fund those wonderful concerts. Okay, seeing no other announcements, we will move on to public comment. Persons wishing to address the City Council on matters not on the posted agenda may do so at this time. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes, and we'll go ahead and start with any speakers on Zoom, and then we can take public comment in person. Crystal, is anyone waiting online to comment?
Yes. Yes, we do have 2 people. Let me go ahead and pull that up. First up is David Tusman. You should be able to go ahead and unmute.
Hello, this is David Tusman. I'm calling in trying to watch the Zoom, and the council chambers is muted. So I can't hear anything anyone's saying. I suspect everyone else is having that issue. So please unmute the council chambers. Thanks. Bye.
David, can you hear me? David?
Okay, maybe we'll take a couple-minute recess. Yeah. Okay. We'll be right back. Any other public commenters online, Crystal?
Yes, we do have another. Okay, so next up is Nancy Goodman. You should be able to unmute.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for turning on the chat. So I actually live in Redwood City, but I am with Fix in San Mateo County, and I'm just urging you to agendize hearing from us for like 10 or 15 minutes for a study session at some point to hear about oversight, civilian oversight of the sheriff. And as you probably are aware, this is something that's happening in a lot of other communities. There's a lot of reasons for it. It's just flat out good government, fiscally responsible, and transparent government. So I hope you will agendize it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. Next up, we have a caller with a phone number ending in 429. You should be able to unmute yourself. You should be able to unmute yourself by pushing *6. Oh, there you go. Hello?
Hi. Yes.
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Shall I speak now?
Yes, please. If you want to introduce
Thank you.
yourself.
Yes. My name is Jim Lawrence. I'm chairman of the board, Fix in San Mateo County. As you may know, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit 501c4. Our mission simply is to represent all residents of San Mateo County and convince the Board of Supervisors to install a civilian oversight board and Inspector General's office for our San Mateo County office. Now, let me put this in context for you very quickly. We live in a democracy. All of our elected leaders have checks and balances. President, Congress, Senate, Supreme Court. Governor Newsom, likewise, the Congress and the Supreme Court. However, our county sheriff does not have any ongoing checks and balances. He reports to no one and answers to no one. I'm sure you read the papers here lately about the situation coming out of his office. For your information, over 200 cities here in the county, here in the state, and nationwide, have civilian oversight boards. So we'd like you to take the time to study this matter and really understand the impact it can have on this community and join us in requesting the Board of Supervisors to use their legislative authority to install a civilian oversight board in the Inspector General's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep. And there are no further hands from Zoom, so we'll go ahead and take our public comment from the chambers. First up is Kathy Baird.
Evening, it's a pleasure to be back in this room. My name is Kathy Baird, and I live and vote in San Carlos. And I'm also here tonight to talk about Fix in San Mateo County. It's a grassroots organization founded by local activists in May 2021. The goal is to establish an effective community-based sheriff oversight board and inspector general, both with subpoena power, to address residents' concerns, investigate issues, and make recommendations for policy and for practice. A community-based oversight board can provide transparency and accountability in our sheriff's office. As you know, law enforcement in San Carlos is provided by the sheriff's office, making transparency of special interest. While we appreciate the willingness of our chief to provide information, we don't want our access to information to depend on who the chief or the sheriff is. And we need a mechanism to address concerns more often than a 4-year election cycle. So please agendize a study session about Fix in San Mateo County at a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Sonia Elks.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. I'm a strong advocate of safe streets in San Carlos, and I just wanted to publicly add to the discussion about the recent San Carlos Safe Routes to School draft plan that was released by Public Works for public comment. And I just wanted to, as early as possible, make it clear that the recommendations are not adequate for bike safety for school children in our town. The glaring oversight is a lack of bike lanes and a reliance on shared lanes for small children and enormous cars. The situation is such that the draft plan is in alignment with the San Carlos Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan. However, it's worth noting that that was commissioned and in 2018 and completed prior to the pandemic announcement in March about the coronavirus. And since then, we've had a massive increase in the number of bicycles and pedestrians on the street, other micromobility, especially among our school children who already feel pretty powerless in a climate-challenged world when there's little they can do to the world they're inheriting. And this is an important part of it, both for their independence and their responsibility. So the main thing I'd like to say is, particularly for Cedar and Arroyo, they need to have bike lanes. And whatever that takes, we need to do, because a shared lane for school children is not acceptable. The last thing I'd like to point out is that a study from Nature just was published in Nature that just came out, tightly linking the increased pandemics to increased global warming very tightly. So I'd suggest you look at that study and take it very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. And the last card we have here is David Pollock.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Pollock, and I'm a resident of San Carlos. I am here speaking tonight to ask you to agendize a study session to learn more about Fixin' San Mateo. Fixin' San Mateo is a grassroots nonprofit funded by local activists in May 2021, of which I'm a proud volunteer. Fixin's goal is to establish an effective community-based sheriff oversight board and inspector general, both with subpoena power, to address resident complaints, investigate issues, and make policy practice recommendations. It will provide sorely needed transparency and accountability to our sheriff's office. As San Carlos contracts with the sheriff's office for services, oversight of the sheriff takes on an even greater significance. Most recently, Half Moon Bay City Council, another city that contracts with the sheriff's office, unanimously passed the resolution to support Fixin' San Mateo County. Please follow Half Moon Bay's example and agendize a study session to learn more about Fixin' San Mateo. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have another card. I believe it's for an item not on the agenda, from Brian McDermott.
Hi, everybody. I recently heard that the council intends to disband the Transportation Commission tonight. And as a humble citizen of San Carlos, I would ask that you reconsider the dissolution of this committee. I see that $400K was recently approved for San Carlos Avenue pedestrian safety and improvement. It sounds like a lot of extra work, especially on the council, and it sounds like you need a dedicated person to help implement some of these changes. Bike lanes in this town are sorely needed, and I ride a bike, and I can attest to how dangerous it is riding in San Carlos. So I would like to throw my hat in the ring if it's still possible. I recently heard about this, so I ask for your reconsideration. Thank you.
Crystal, is that the final public comment for the evening?
That's the last one in the chambers. I'm just going to check Zoom to make sure we don't have anyone else. And there are no further hands.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Brian, for your comments. We'll get to that closer to the end of our agenda if you'd like to stick around for that. And I wanted to thank everyone for their public comment this evening. We appreciate having you all join us in the chambers tonight, and as also those who joined us online. So we will now move on to item 6, the consent calendar. We have item 6K taken out of the consent calendar. Does anyone else wish to pull any item from the consent calendar? Councilmember Dugan? No? Okay. Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'll move to approve City Council consent calendar items A through J, excluding K.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rack?
Yes.
And Mayor McDowell?
Yes. Okay, thank you. We will now move on to item 7, new business. Item A is consideration of adopting a resolution establishing 15 miles per hour prima facie limit along qualified city streets in school zones when children are present. And with us this evening is Grace Lee, City Engineer.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Grace Lee, City Engineer. I'll be presenting for your consideration establishing a 15 miles per hour speed limit in school zones when children are present. The 15 miles per hour school zone aligns with Council's 2022 strategic plan goal of mobility, traffic, and transportation infrastructure. It is also a policy recommendation in our city's bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Most importantly, it minimizes the risk of severe or fatal conflicts with vehicles and encourages students to walk or bike to school. The California Vehicle Code governs establishing speed limits. In order to reduce the speed limit near school zones to 15 miles per hour, the street must meet certain criteria. And these criteria are being located within a residential district, having a posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour or lower, being located within 500 feet of a school, and also having a maximum of 2 lanes, one in each direction. Staff evaluated 15 streets adjacent to all 6 of our school sites. At this point, only public school sites have been evaluated and only sites that are in school zones. So at this point, we haven't, it doesn't include senior centers, and that's because the state law is still unclear on senior centers, and it's really geared towards school safety. All 15 streets meet the criteria, and therefore staff is recommending lowering the speed limit to 15 miles per hour when students are present, or when children are present. Should council approve the resolution, staff will begin outreach via social media and school districts channels. The goal is to change out the signs before school starts. We'll also put out changeable message signs alerting the public of these changes. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Grace. Before we start questions, I just wanted to thank you very much for your work on this. I know that I brought forward my preference for tackling this year during our strategic retreat in January, and I know that Public Works has been very busy on a number of infrastructure projects, so I appreciate you accommodating this work this year. So I'll go ahead and open it to questions for Grace. Councilmember Dugan and then Vice Mayor Rack.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Grace, for the good presentation. And yeah, this seems to be a good initiative. Have you had any outreach or coordination with public safety on this with the Sheriff's Department, and how that, you know, are we going to, like, what do you, how do we see the enforcement of this rolling out?
Yes, we have had conversations with the sheriff's office, and they know of these changes. Initially, every school year before the school starts, the sheriff puts out signs, and they're more alert to the school site areas when school starts, and that would also happen here. We'll put out changeable message signs to say that not only is school starting, but the speed limit would be lowered to 15 miles per hour. I imagine, and I don't want to speak for the sheriff's office, but I imagine it would be a soft rollout in terms of more verbally letting people know that it's 15 miles per hour and not to exceed that speed, rather than a harsh take on citation. And that's how we can help also with that social media and the outreach, and letting this parents know that that's what's happening, that's the change that's coming up.
Okay.
So education is an important part of it.
Got it. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad we're having those signs, the mobile signs out there, augmenting the physical signs. And then just, I know you mentioned that it was while children are present, but that's in all cases? This is only going to apply when children are present?
Yeah, the state law is very clear that it has to be when children are present. So that's not something we have leeway on.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Vice Mayor Beck.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Grace. I just had a couple of questions. So in terms of the study itself, so you only cover the public school areas, and there's obviously some overlap at Britton Acres with St. Charles because of how the street goes on that. And so was there any, is the state law only apply to public schools, or is it give us the flexibility around some of the sort of elementary schools? And if so, why didn't we not look at those?
The state law is not specific for public schools. The reason why we started with public schools is it's already 15 segments, street segments, and we're launching this all out at once. So we're a little nervous on how the enforcement, the education, all that's going to play in. So we want to make sure that it's a manageable amount and that we're able to gather data, learn from the experience before expanding it further.
Okay. And then, thank you, that's helpful, knowing that we can make some additional changes over time. My second question is, and I know we don't have a map up of sort of the way the schools are, but I was trying to understand how the setup is for around Central when you say Chestnut from Bay Tree to Cherry. So, apologize, we don't have a map.
I do have a map for you.
So, because it's sort of, to me, that's sort of, it's sort of like a little jog and then a turn and then sort of, it's sort of a little bit of a funky layout for that. So.
Yeah, so for Chestnut, it is a funky jog, like you said. We're going to go from Cherry to Bay Tree. It is, the challenge here is the state code has a language about it has to be adjacent to the school site, has to be within 500 feet. And it's when children are present, so you'll have to be able to reasonably know if children are present at the ground. So we can't go too far off, but we also don't want abrupt changes, right, in speed limit. So this is where we're recommending for Chestnut.
Okay, and I think it's great we're doing. I just I'm not quite sure why, because there's a stop sign, I believe, at Bay Tree and Arroyo. I think maybe not. I thought there is, but. So it just seems like we're adding some stuff there, and maybe we didn't, but it sounds like it needs to be adjacent. So School Street or Woodland, parts of Woodland couldn't be included because of the way the state law is?
Yeah, because it's not
adjacent to the school. So
yeah.
Even though it's approaching the school the same way, it's not adjacent to the school property.
Right. It's tricky in terms of, because of that wording, that when children are present, you need to be able to reasonably assess if children are present on the grounds.
Right, I understand. I just know that some of those are important walking paths for us. So it sounds like potentially there's, maybe we need to go talk to our state legislators about trying to make some amendments to this law. But okay, thank you. That's helpful. I appreciate the clarification.
I'm going to build on your questions, Adam. So, Grace, with this map here, why is Arroyo going all the way down to Elm? Not that I'm opposed to it, but it just seems like that's pretty far. And I'm looking at other maps that you provided, how that compares. Perhaps could you put up the Britton Acres map, please? So just to be clear, though, I don't oppose going that far. I think that's fine. But you and I talked today about Cordilleras, because we have a lot of speeding there. And I know from experience that a lot of Britton Acres kids cross at Bell and Cordilleras. So many cross there that usually 2 crossing guards have historically been needed. And so I think it's very obvious on Cordilleras that children are present, but we haven't designated Cordilleras, those couple of blocks, for the 15 miles per hour. So could you just walk me through a little bit? Because I know that you said it's adjacent or 500 feet. Is it both? It has to be both, or one or the other?
It has to be both.
Okay.
So Cordilleras is because it's really adjacent to residential homes and not the school itself. And approaching it, it's a turn rather than a straight. Whereas you see Arroyo is it's leading you into the school. So we can use that word approaching for covering that section. So we're trying to include as many sections as we can within the tight language in the code, because we're relying on that state code for defensibility. So we want to be able to make sure that we're able to reason that out. And so in this case, we're saying that whole street is a segment, the Arroyo, and it's continuation approaching that school that is fronting the school. Whereas Cordilleras is not fronting the school, it's a little bit harder to say that it's part of any segment. It's not part of a segment that's adjacent to school, so it is a farther stretch to use that code section.
Okay. Well, I hope we can continue to keep that in our pocket, because I think the block before Bell and the block after should probably be targeted if we can get a little leeway there. And then I also just wanted to build on Adam's question about the public schools, because I know we have Arbor Bay School that has, quite a few children as well, and it would be really nice to incorporate them in this program. So where do you see this pilot, and how long does this take, and what's the potential for expansion?
It usually, with the start of the school year and people having to adjust to the new speed limit, I think it would take a few months to have a good gauge on how well this is being received. I think once we have that data back, we'll be able to make a stronger case or have a stronger argument that, this is working well. Don't have issues, or if we have issues, we made modification, and so then if we expand the program, we would be more confident and able to handle it.
Thank you. Any other further questions from the council? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and open to public comment. I think we'll go ahead and check Zoom first, and then we'll do in-person public comment, if that sounds good.
First up we have is David Tusman. You should be able to unmute.
Hello, my name is David Tusman. I live in San Carlos on Chestnut Street, part of where this would encompass. I say I'm strongly in favor of this proposal, and I think it's a good example of doing things quickly that are easy and cheap, and then seeing how the community responds, and then hopefully expanding it, as Councilmember McDowell was talking about. I also, it seems like this is all about, the state only allows us to do this prima facie default unsigned rule in these certain zones. But I wonder, is there any constraint of if we put a sign that says 50 miles an hour here when children are present? Is there any constraint on that? And maybe that would be the next step after this first phase that was mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Next up is Karen Molinari.
Thank you, Crystal, and hello, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this measure. As you know, I was a part of the effort to increase Samtrans school bus routes to reduce our traffic, specifically en route to our schools and throughout town. And I am definitely in support of this effort, and would also like to comment that I do believe we should increase our bike lanes in conjunction with this, as Sonia Elks mentioned previously, on the way to our schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. There are no further hands on Zoom, and I don't have any public comment cards from the public. I checked both of those. Oh, okay. Please come on up. We need you on the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sonia Elks, Safe Routes to School and General Active Transportation proponent, San Carlos. I don't have the verbiage of this measure, or this policy, or that was passed to bring 50-mile-per-hour speed zones to our school districts, but I believe that my reading of it included a 500 feet from the school ground edge. So I would cast a wider net. I think it can include orange from my ruler and map experiment. So I hear what you're saying about needing it to be adjacent to school, but it sounds like it also says it can be 500 feet from school grounds. So maybe you could check on that and see if that is accurate or not. And I would also, obviously I'm strongly in favor of the measure, but I wanted to also encourage including St. Charles and Arbor Bay in the initial pilot, and including, therefore, that whole stretch of Britain in front of the park. So I would like to know if that can also be a defensible reason to extend the borders beyond what you currently have, as long as it's not a bigger project than Public Works and the Sheriff's Office can handle. Can you answer that, or is that something that can't be answered?
We'll tackle that after public comment.
Okay,
We'll circle back with staff. Thank you, Sonia. Is there any other further public comment this evening?
I don't have any cards, but if you have one, you're welcome to approach the podium.
Okay, seeing none, thank you all. Thanks very much for the public comment, very helpful. Grace, would you mind just giving I think you kind of discussed it already, but extending the borders with St. Charles and Arbor Bay, you wanted to, what you said earlier was you preferred to start with this pilot. Did you want to expound upon that?
That's correct. I already feel that 15 streets is a lot to implement in 2 weeks before school starts, and also be able to enforce, educate, and basically analyze and keep track. I think this would be a good start to gather data and see if there's anything that we can tweak before expanding or moving it into a bigger program.
Thank you, Grace. I'll go ahead and open it up to council discussion. I see Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Grace, I think you answered my question, which was we start with this and we revisit it later, and if we want to consider adding the other locations, we can do that, correct? This seems like a lot to assimilate and so quickly, right? Because you want to get it done before school starts.
That's correct.
All right, so we can take a look at it down the line.
That's
okay,
correct.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ron. Councilmember Parmer Lohan.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank the mayor for bringing this forward. I really appreciate the initiative and the thought around it. I think it's fair to say just navigating school drop-off is really frightening, given the fact that there's kids walking and kids riding bikes and, a hurried approach, right, to get there before the bell, and especially with cars. I personally avoid, when I'm headed out that time of day, that traffic, and it does come down my street. So, and I know we've had a couple of children hit by cars recently and near misses, and those are just as equally terrifying. So I'm really supportive of this. One of the things I noted in the background on the packet was the fact that this also can extend towards facilities where there's seniors. And I've noticed some of our community members just trying to cross the street right outside City Hall. And I'm always really concerned because they have walkers and they're walking slowly. And again, this is a harried culture and people are always very busy. So at a future state, I'd like to further explore this initiative for maybe those areas where we have senior citizens. And then there's also an intersection at Arroyo and Elm that is particularly challenging. It's a bit of a blind curve. Again, at a future date, possibly looking at that stretch, just because, again, crossing that street is a bit of a challenge. I also appreciate the phased approach that Councilmember Collins is suggesting. I think that's appropriate. Maybe there's a way that we can enlist some of the community groups that support the schools to help with the education effort, just to spread the word, right? Healthy cities, maybe the PTAs, et cetera, as well as I know there's newsletters that go out. So if there could be a heavy collaboration, right, to help get the word, because I know it's just around the corner, and I hear your concern, Grace, about making sure that this is successful. So you'll have my support on this initiative tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer-Lohan. Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I too thank the mayor for bringing this forward and keeping this front and center. Just a very good initiative. It's, providing for the safety of our children, almost a no-brainer here in my view. It's very hectic around school drop-offs here in town. I've heard nothing but overwhelming support for this initiative, and it's in line with my own observations of just the obvious danger that is present at time, and the natural conflict between adults hurrying to work and the safety of our children. And it's easy to put the balance on the safety of our children on that. It's also a clear recommendation of our bike and pedestrian master plan, which an awful lot of work and community outreach and input went into. So this is in alignment with that. And it's also comfortably in alignment with our safe routes to schools and the recent work we've done on that. And I look forward to our further work with that document as we look towards expanding our bike lanes and other ways of getting our children safely to schools, sidewalks, et cetera. And then, so I will be supporting this evening. I also support revisiting this over time, but I wonder if there's an opportunity where we could just delegate the additional rollout of this, given the relatively tight parameters from the state of the 500 feet plus adjacency to a school. It seems like we could just delegate the extension of this as it makes sense to Public Works, unless we also want to just visit it personally. I'm comfortable either way. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Those are great points. I'm comfortable delegating to Public Works. I think we've made our message clear tonight that we'd like to expand it as feasible. I too am really excited about rolling this out, especially right before school, and I agree with Councilmember Palmer-Lohan to partner with the schools and their newsletters to get this out. Grace, you did some fantastic maps for me earlier today, and I think that if we can post those perhaps on social media to get it out to the parents, I think those visuals are really helpful. I think it will be well received. I see many streets on here that have been kind of perennial concerns, like Melody and Dartmouth and Cedar, where we've received lots of speeding concerns anyway and conflicts with children. So I think that these maps are very helpful for the public. So I too am thrilled to get this rolling right before school starts. Are there any other comments, feedback? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'll move to adopt Resolution 2022-26, a resolution that, I'm sorry? 86, sorry. A resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos establishing a prima facie speed limit of 15 miles an hour along qualified city streets and school zones when children are present.
Second.
Any further discussion? Vice Mayor?
Oh, I just know that I just wanted to thank you also for your leadership on this, Madam Mayor, and I look forward to supporting this and hearing how the results are.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Rack,
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan,
Yes.
Councilmember Collins,
Yes.
Councilmember Parma Lohan,
Yes.
and Mayor McDowell.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. We will now move on to item 7B, consideration of introducing an ordinance amending San Carlos Municipal Code, Chapter 9.30, Noise Control, Section 9.30.070, exempt activities, B, construction activities, and we are joined by Chris Valley, building official.
All right, good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. Chris Valley, building official. This evening I'll be introducing an ordinance to amend our construction noise hours to formally adopt our current noise hours. If you'll recall, when COVID first started, various construction projects were essentially shut down the first few months as restrictions eased some. And that was around April 30th, April 3rd, 2020. We moved forward with emergency order number 1 by the city manager, which established the construction noise hours to 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. That didn't last all that long until we moved on to resolution 2020-26, which established the current construction noise hours that we have of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturdays, with no construction noise Sundays and holidays. All of this was done under the governor's executive order, which expired April 1st, and that's why we're here this evening, as our temporary construction noise hours established at that time are ineffective. Back in April of 2020, when we adopted our current construction noise hours, staff provided a comparison of other cities, and that's what you have right here before you. We fell a little more into line with other cities' construction noise hours by not allowing Sunday hours, holiday hours, and then kind of dovetailing our weekend and Saturday hours a little bit better with how other cities' construction noise hours operated. And so what you have, staff recommends amending the San Carlos Municipal Code, Chapter 9.30, Noise Control, Section 9.30.070, exempt activities, B, construction activities as they currently are, which is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday, and no Sunday or holiday construction noise. Just a little sidebar. We don't get a whole lot of complaints from residents or contractors about these particular noise hours. Contractors find them fair, allows for a full workday and a Saturday option. And then residents, we're also getting fewer complaints from residents about they used to be able to work until 6 p.m. and now that got reduced or tightened up to 5 p.m. So it became kind of a happy medium, so to speak, with everybody for the most part. And I'm here with any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Chris. Questions from council? I see Vice Mayor Reck.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for bringing this forward, and Chris, thanks for the update. My question is, and maybe this is for Greg, about potentially making some small amendment to this. So in terms of the holidays themselves, so we now have Juneteenth as a federal holiday. That's not listed in there. Is there a way to simplify it and just say all sort of approved or signed federal holidays so that if things change, we wouldn't have to make some updates to that? Because right now that's a new federal holiday. It's not called out.
Yeah, I think we could do that, but it might be simpler to, since it's an identified holiday, to put that list, to add that to the motion to add that as a holiday. But yeah, we could just say all federal holidays. But I think tonight there's some state holidays that I think might be listed there. I'm trying to look at it. No, they all seem like they're all federal holidays. So if we said all federal holidays. That federally recognized holidays, I think we could do that.
I mean, I'm fine with whatever. I think we should add it at a minimum, and if we could sort of be maybe a catch-all, because if things change, we don't have to come back and amend this.
It might be a cleanup because there might be references elsewhere in the code. We're kind of looking at one section here. It might be better just to add Juneteenth, and then we can possibly look at creating a section that has a definition of whenever holidays are referenced, and then we can do a cleanup.
Just use it that way. That makes sense. Okay. So I'm happy to make that motion after. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Councilmember Dugan?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Chris, thank you. Just a quick question. I think you said our old hours went till 6, but they were 8 to 6. That's what we had before the pandemic?
Yes, before the pandemic, we're 8 to 6. And if I recall, when I first started here, we even started at 7. I believe there were 7 to 6 initially, but that was a decade or so back.
Got it. Yeah, that would be pretty early. And as we've come off of COVID, there haven't been contractors complaining, saying this is slowing down their projects, et cetera.
No,
Okay.
none, in fact.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. I don't see any other hands raised, so we will now move to public comment. Crystal, is anyone waiting in the waiting room in Zoom?
No, there are no hands in Zoom, and I don't believe we have any comments from the public in chambers.
Okay. Seeing no public comment, we'll move to council discussion. Do any of my colleagues wish to give any additional feedback? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to introduce ordinance number
1586.
an ordinance of the city 1586. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos amending San Carlos Municipal Code Chapter 9.30 Noise Control Section 9.3.070 exempt activities. B, construction activities, adding the Juneteenth holiday as the list of exempted dates where construction is prohibited.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
And Mayor McDowell?
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. We will now move to item 7C, consideration of authorizing the mayor to sign a letter urging Sutter Health to reopen the Mac E. Michelson Arthritis and Rehabilitation Center therapy pool in San Mateo, and we are joined by Assistant City Manager Niall Blackburn.
Good evening, thank you. For this next item before you this evening, staff is recommending that the City Council authorize the mayor to sign the letter addressed to Sutter Health that was included in your packets, urging them to reopen the Mac E. Michelson therapy pool located at Mills Health Center in San Mateo, or alternatively, to reconsider the Peninsula Healthcare District's offer to pay the costs to reopen, repair, and manage the pool. The Mac E. Michelson therapy pool was entirely financed by community funds over 25 years ago. It complies with the Americans with Disabilities Act and serves as the only fully accessible warm water pool on the peninsula. It provides therapy and relief to individuals with chronic pain, seniors with rehabilitation needs, patients recovering from surgeries, disabled individuals, children with special needs, and so many more. Sutter Health temporarily closed the pool in March 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and then it permanently closed the pool in June 2021. Despite a petition signed by over 4,300 patients, community members, and others to reopen the pool, the Sutter Health has not reversed its decision to close the pool. And furthermore, it has rejected an offer by the Peninsula Healthcare District to pay for necessary upgrades and operating costs until an alternate solution could be found. So for this evening, if you all do so, by authorizing the mayor to sign and send a letter to Sutter Health on behalf of the council, the San Carlos City Council would join dozens of civic leaders and other local governments, urging Sutter Health to either reopen the pool or reconsider the Peninsula Healthcare District's offer. I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Niall. And thank you for all your help with drafting that letter. I will go ahead and open to council questions. Vice Mayor Rack.
I just first want to disclose that I did meet with Sutter Health, and that will not influence my decision tonight.
All right, any Councilmember Dugan?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Niall. Just a quick question. Do we have any idea what they're trying to accomplish? I mean, this is just a huge political backlash against them. Are they wanting to bulldoze it and build a new hospital tower? Like, what are they trying to do here? Do we know?
I'm not sure. I read some articles, and it just seems like it wasn't financially lucrative, and perhaps that's the reason why they are saying this. They've also pushed back on some of the comments that it was community funded 25 years ago and so forth, but I don't really know the business decision driving it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Vice Mayor Rack.
Turn that on. Thank you, Niall, for the presentation. Can you tell me, do we know how many people were being serviced by that pool or were accessing it? I mean, I'm just curious, like how used it was prior to being closed.
That's an excellent question. I don't have that number, but I do know it has that petition signed by over 4,300 folks, and that at least 36 different cities and agencies have joined in, but I don't have the number.
Okay. I just was curious on that because I mean, I looked at the petition online, and it's hard. You can't see who. At least I couldn't figure out how to see who's actually signed it. Whether it's local residents, or is anyone from San Carlos who's using it, just to understand that. And then I was just and you probably don't know the answer to this, but I was just kind of saw that they talked about people traveling from as far away as Oakland, but yet were potentially looking at the Peninsula Healthcare District paying for it, which was interesting that you'd have people coming from, out of the county, out of that district who are using it. But I'm happy to support it. I just was sort of had some questions around it, but I assumed you may not know this. So, but I'm asking them anyway, so they're out there. Thanks.
Councilmember Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Niall. I mean, we know from sending letters like this that they don't tend to do much good. I mean, that doesn't mean I'm not in favor of sending a letter, but I'm just curious. Sutter's a nonprofit organization, so insurance probably pays for a lot of these patients. Do you know whether or not the county has considered making an offer to assume the entire operation?
I don't know that the county has done that. The Peninsula Healthcare District has done that.
I know the Peninsula Healthcare, I mean, but they're, sort of, I mean, they'd be the appropriate one. I agree. It's just, I wonder if maybe the county with a little bit more clout
That's a great idea.
might be interested in addressing the issue. Maybe not. I'm sure, I mean, they're not ignorant of it. And it would seem to me that if they have considered it in the past, and they may have, we're just not aware of it. But anyway, it's just curious to me how an organization like this would not consider being relieved of any sort of financial responsibility. And I don't expect you to know the answer. I don't think anybody does at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Jeff, did you want to chime in? I saw your, no, okay. Okay, thank you, Niall. We will now move to public comment. Crystal, is anyone waiting in the Zoom waiting room?
I don't see any hands on Zoom, and it doesn't look like any members of the public have their hands up either.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion from council on this item? Councilmember Palmer Lohan.
Thank you. And I believe, I want to thank Ron, because I believe you brought this to our attention, if I'm not mistaken, a few weeks ago. Maybe you don't remember. I thought it was you, because you're the pool, you're the pool guy. But all right. But I appreciate whoever brought it forward. I did attend a rally a few weeks ago, actually at Mickelson Pool, and there were dozens of people on hand, including many people who use the pool regularly. And several were courageous and brave enough to tell their personal stories, which were really heartbreaking. For many with chronic conditions for which there's really no relief or solution, this was one point of relief for them. Not only did it give them physical comfort and help them build their strength, but it also was a great source of community. People from all walks of life with all types of different ailments. And it's just really heartbreaking to see this incredible resource being taken away. So I do hope that the letter has some help in this way, and I will be supporting its issuance to Sutter Health. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to sign a letter urging Sutter Health to reopen the Mac E. Mickelson Arthritis and Rehabilitation Center therapy pool in San Mateo.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, I just wanted to thank my colleagues for their support of this. I think it's very important for us to make our voices heard on this issue, and I'm glad that it's moving forward. Seeing no further discussion, Crystal, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
And Mayor McDowell?
Yes. Okay, we will now move on to item 7D, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a relocation agreement, an assignment and assumption of ground lease agreement, and a sublease agreement for a digital billboard at 611 Industrial Road, APN 046090370. Christian Padilla will be joining us this evening, but before you start, Christian, I'm going to recuse myself from this item out of an abundance of caution. As you all know, I'm running for re-election, and a volunteer on my campaign works for a company that manages the property that will be discussed tonight. So although they are not directly involved, I'm going to recuse myself again out of an abundance of caution, and the Vice Mayor will lead this item, and I will leave the room. Thank you.
Taking your chair, too.
Go too far.
Okay. Christian, go ahead. Sorry.
Good evening. Christian Padilla, Economic Development Coordinator. So before you tonight is the proposed digital billboard at 611 Industrial Road. For background, there are currently 6 billboards in the city of San Carlos. 4 of the billboards are digital and are shown as green stars on this map, and 2 of the billboards are static, shown as yellow stars on this map. The billboard at 611 Industrial is near the center of this image, and it's shown as a blue star. And lastly, the billboards shown as red stars are located outside city limits, but are included since they are found in close proximity to the other San Carlos billboards. The location of this digital billboard is 611 Industrial Road on the Bell Plumbing property, nearby the Residence Inn Hotel. The property is owned by a private party, therefore the city would proceed with executing a lease assignment with this property owner directly. Subsequently, the city would also execute a sublease agreement with Orion Outdoor Media. This would allow Orion Outdoor Media to construct a billboard on city-controlled land. Here you will see a visual representation of what the proposed billboard would look like when heading north on the 101. The top image shows the existing site, while the bottom image renders the proposed billboard near the left-hand side. Here is another visual representation exercise, but from the other direction. This is heading south on the 101. This billboard would be identical to the other 3 billboards located on city-controlled property. The billboard would have 2 14 by 48 feet LED displays, one on each side, as well as a city sign and logo, which would be located on the pole. In regards to fiscal implication, the city would receive an ongoing 32% share of gross advertising revenue annually with a minimum payment guarantee of $210,000 annually. This minimum payment guarantee includes an escalation of 12.5% every 5 years. The term of this agreement is 20 years with an option to extend for an additional 10 years. And the city would receive $150,000 from Orion Outdoor Media as a one-time non-refundable payment on the start date of the sublease agreement. This item went before Planning Commission on February 22nd, 2022, and received approval for a design review certificate and a mitigated negative declaration. The lease documents are now before City Council for approval. City staff recommends the adoption of a resolution approving a relocation agreement, a lease assignment, and a sublease agreement for the proposed digital billboard at 611 Industrial Road. And this concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. And Adam Aronson is also joined via Zoom to answer questions.
Thank you, Christian. Are there any questions from the council? Ron, I see your...
Thank you, Vice Mayor Reck. Thank you for the presentation. I only have one question for the moment. Our previous billboards, is the income that we projected that we would get initially performing the way we thought it would? In other words, are we getting less, same, more?
If you don't mind, Adam, I will refer to you for this question.
I can. Thank you, Christian. And I apologize, everyone, that I'm not there in person tonight. The short answer is yes, they had been performing as projected. They faced a slight downturn in 2021 during the pandemic when there was less traffic on the roads. But generally, each year we've seen from each billboard that they tend to exceed the minimal annual guaranteed payment and come in at between $350,000 and $450,000 a year.
Great. All right.
To the city. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Councilmember Collins. Anyone else? Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. It's a handsome source of revenue. What I didn't see was what are the terms of the underlying lease? And so this is privately owned land that we're going to have a land lease on. And do we know the terms of the land lease and how and what is the duration of the land lease?
So the terms of the land lease, they align with the sublease. So it's also 20 years with the 10-year option. And there is a separate payment that the operator pays to the city, and then we then pass through that payment to the property owner.
I see. So we're not even, I guess we're in that loop, but it's a direct offset. Whatever we get charged by that lease, the Orion pays as well.
Exactly.
Okay. And then at the end of the land lease, so we don't, like, the owner of this property could just say kaput to the whole program and would have to take this down some year. Is that correct?
They could say that at the end of the 10-year option period, but the 10-year option period is at the discretion of the operator.
I see. Okay. And just final question, are we confident we want city advertisement, our city's name on these things? Is that good for us as a city? They are a bit of an eyesore as you drive down 101. I'm just curious, have we thought about that, or we just naturally think signage is a good thing?
It's what we've done historically on the other billboards, but we certainly don't have to. And if the council would prefer not to have our logo on there, we could take it off.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I don't know. It kind of looks good, but I don't know if that's wise from a city marketing perspective. I don't really have any opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dugan. Any other questions? Okay. Krishna or Adam, two questions. With this proposal, so there is no, the removal of the billboard sort of as part of this is in Shasta County, is that correct?
That's correct.
So on Route 5, so we're just sort of being additive and adding more billboards here in San Carlos?
Yes.
Okay. And to your knowledge, or Adam, we tend to sort of get these billboards just coming in ad hoc versus having sort of a specific policy around how many billboards we want to have, what the process is going to be around this, any criteria that we want to have. So it's just sort of we get something, we decide what we want to do, and we make a decision versus sort of having a policy in place. Is that accurate?
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions. I turned off because I'm done. Crystal, we'll take questions from the public. Is there anything anyone online?
There are no hands up for this item.
Okay. And anything in?
Not remotely or in person. Thank you.
Okay. Oh.
I'd like to put in my 2 cents to echo what Mr. Dugan said about, do we really need more advertising in our lives in a really hectic, questionably, I don't know. I'm just concerned, and I appreciate that you raised that question.
Thank you, Sonia. All right, is there anyone else? Okay.
No further hands.
If not, we'll go back to the council for any other comments or make a motion. Okay.
I move to adopt Resolution 2022-87. I guessed right. A resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos approving a relocation agreement and assignment and assumption of ground lease agreement and a sublease agreement for the digital billboard at 611 Industrial Road, APN 046-090-370.
There's a second? If not,
Second.
I'd like to make a competing motion. I move that the council reject this proposal and come back, and that the staff come back with a recommendation on criteria and a limit on the number of billboards in San Carlos. Okay, no second? All right, then we'll call for a vote.
Comment?
Comments. Sorry,
Yeah.
further comments. I'm figuring this whole, running the meeting thing out. Let's see. John, go ahead. You go first, and then we'll go to.
All right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Well, I guess I would just say I think I do support this evening. I appreciate, Vice Mayor, your concern. I've shared that concern. I had those concerns even on the Planning Commission. As I understand it, we've established guidelines to staff that this is likely the last one we will approve. We will look at future proposals perhaps, but I think I verified today that we've communicated that this might well be the last one. I will say, it is a handsome source of revenue to the city. So on that basis, I would support it. If we have a consensus on that, I am just curious about my colleagues' opinions on whether we want the City of Good Living San Carlos as part of this. I'm kind of mixed about that, but I don't have a strong opinion. I almost would want to see what a marketer had to say about that, but wonder what my colleagues feel about it.
Okay. Well, I think Councilmember Collins has his button.
Yes, I am.
pushed there,
I'm
so-
giving you a wide leash tonight, a long leash. This is good training for potentially being mayor in the future. John, I'm glad you asked the question. I see it almost completely differently. When people drive down the freeway, they see City of San Carlos. A lot of people don't know where we are. And that's a reminder that we're here. And I hear people tell me all the time when they ask me, where do you live? And I tell them San Carlos. They say, oh, I've heard of San Carlos, and a few people have said, I've seen the sign, so I know where it is. We're a small town. A lot of people don't know where we are. So I see it as sort of a good thing for the city. We're on the map. We have a pretty good reputation. There was a letter to the editor today praising us for some of the things that we're doing around housing. So I think it's a good thing that we're on the map. The other thing I wanted to respond to was the comment about the number of billboards. My perspective is that years ago when I was first on the council and we were considering these, is that there was an informal goal of no more than 6. Now, that's not a policy, but that's more or less what we've been looking at and pointing for the last 10 years or so. I think if we had more than 6, I think I might draw the line there, but I think this is our 5th, is that right? Yeah, it's our 5th. Now, we can have a debate about the 6th, but I think that's something that we've talked about for a long time. So, and I'm pretty comfortable with it. Plus, its location is, right next to a building. It's really only going to be seen by the people driving down the freeway. So, and I'm in support of it. Plus, as I said, I think we ought to keep the pretty City of Good Living logo. I think that actually benefits us.
Okay. John, did you still have other follow-up?
Thank you. I will just say thank you, Ron. I appreciate your thoughts on that. So, yeah, I support leaving the City of Good Living on it. But I think I don't. If I'm counting up the greens and the yellows, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? Is this our 7th billboard?
6. Okay.
Yes, that would.
Well, that's 6 billboards, not 6 digital billboards.
Oh, okay.
The yellow ones are static billboards.
Yeah.
3, 4. Oh, our 5th digital, and then we have 2 statics. Okay. That's a lot of billboard, but I will second Councilmember Collins's motion.
Okay. Any other comments? I think we're already seconded, John. I think
you did a counter.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan already seconded it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then.
Unless you're seconding my counter offer, which I would accept.
You specifically said my name, so.
I certainly appreciate Vice Mayor Rack, your sentiment there, and I believe I would join you on any future billboards. We've done a lot of work on this one, so I will support this evening if we're ready for a vote.
Okay, before we vote, Crystal, I'd just like to comment that I'll be opposing this. I think we have enough billboards, and I think if we need to be removing them if we're replacing them. And I think we should have a policy in place in terms of actual formal policy versus sort of a handshake that seems to exist right now. So with that, I will call for the vote. Crystal?
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rack?
No. Motion passes. Say that, Crystal. See?
And I was going to say Mayor McDowell has recused herself, so the motion passes 3-2.
All right. Thank you. Will you call the mayor back? I do. I've been fumbling around enough. I think I'm good. Next time I'm getting a tutorial from Crystal.
Madam Mayor, the Vice Mayor is very glad you're back.
Okay. Get my paperwork organized here. We will now move on to item 7E, consideration of introducing an ordinance amending San Carlos Municipal Code, Chapter 2.24, Commissions, by repealing Section 2.24.300, Transportation and Circulation Commission, removing references to the Commission, and amending Section 2.24140, Planning Commission, Powers and Duties. And Jeff, you're giving the presentation this evening?
I am giving the presentation this evening, Madam Mayor. Jeff Maltby, City Manager. The item before you this evening relates to our Traffic and Circulation Commission, which has existed in the city for a little over 20 years and has undergone a number of revisions and changes over the years. The commission is a recommending body. It has no oversight or approval functions associated with it, unlike, say, a planning commission that has a specifically defined role under the law. In fact, planning commission is the only commission that state law requires a city of a certain size to have. So we have it. The item tonight isn't to eliminate the commission, it's to consolidate the commission with the planning commission function. And this is something that the city has done in the past. It's often that we've had bodies that have served multiple functions. For example, the city council in the past has served as the redevelopment agency board of directors, the successor agency board of directors. You all currently serve also as our housing agency board. We have had plans of a future potential transit authority for shuttles and those kinds of things that you might consider in the future as part of some of the work that's being done on the east side we've talked about before. In terms of our commissions in the past, we've had the Arts and Culture Commission was combined with Parks and Rec, and this often has to do with just the workload, the availability, job satisfaction is a big component of this. I don't want anybody to think that this reflects on our Traffic and Circulation Commission or its members. That's not really at all what this is about. It's about how work gets accomplished within the city and who's working on it, how many meetings we're having, and those kinds of things, dealing with our scarce resources and often trying to move projects forward in a timely fashion. And traffic projects in particular can be subject to seasonal ebbs and shifts where you don't want to be doing traffic and paving and those kinds of things in winter months is a difficult time to be doing those kinds of projects. So timing can be critical. Some of the feedback that we've got from past commissions had to do with just not having a lot to do as a commission. And what's really kind of changed over the years in terms of how the city functions is, 20 years ago when the Traffic and Circulation Commission really came into being, there were 0 subcommittees of the city council. That wasn't something that city councils did, and the city didn't hold study sessions and those kinds of things. And a lot more work came through commissions where the council might have an idea, but then they delegate it all out to a commission, and if it came back to the council at all, it was usually very quickly just approved in terms of what the commission had been recommended. But years ago, and probably as the demographics shifted in terms of who makes up our city council and their backgrounds, the council became a lot more involved. We created a strategic plan where the council is creating those goals and visions for the city and really driving the agenda and being much more involved in the projects that we're working on, the policies that are being created. For larger policies like, BPAC policies or general plan updates or those kinds of things, it's often something where and I imagine the council will consider doing this again in the future, where you might create a committee to work, of community members to work on a specific large-scale project where you want to get that additional feedback. We hold, a lot more community meetings now nowadays than what we did years ago. We would often consider our commission meetings to be those community meetings. So a topic might appear on a commission and the community could come to the meeting and participate if they wanted. Now we often go out and, you know, and we know we're doing a lot more Zoom-wise now, but in the years leading up to that, we'd go out to the neighborhoods and have specific community meetings and do a lot of specifically targeted outreach to either neighborhoods or areas or the whole city, depending on the issue. So we've really sort of expanded the scope of how we do things, but at the end of the day, it's not really left for there to be a lot of work for the commissions and the commissioners to do, since it's really just an advisory role. They're taking a look at those things, and when they've already gone through all those other processes, there's just not a lot of room left for them to feel like they're having an impact, and that's what we've heard. We've tried to change things and tweak things. It's I think, led to, with this commission more so than others, attendance issues and quorum issues where we've had to cancel a lot of TNC meetings, slowing down projects and things. The Planning Commission meets every 2 weeks as opposed to, 4 to 6 times a year, and we were even having to cancel some of those meetings for lack of a quorum with only 4 to 6, so it was becoming difficult to work with TNC. We've gotten, we've had a number of projects where we've gotten specific direction from council to have, where council wanted to serve, and that's great. You're really like our major league ball club. You get the most public involvement and the most impact in terms of telegraphing to the community what's going on and folks paying attention. So I don't want people to think that the items that appeared on TNC agendas are just not going to appear anymore. They are going to appear. They're going to appear on the Planning Commission agendas, and we're going to be able to hold those meetings. We'll certainly be able to, have enough to, we've never really had a problem recruiting and retaining planning commissioners. Planning commissioners already have a role in that traffic process, and a lot of the land use projects that come forward involve, traffic components and traffic projects. So between the city council and the planning commission, we feel like we've got ample capacity and energy to continue to move these traffic and circulation issues forward in the community. Council has done a really outstanding job, in my opinion, over the last few years of really heightening and loosening the purse strings up, putting a lot more money into our bike ped master plan and subsequent projects, into street resurfacing, sidewalk projects, all those types of things. We have the opportunity that we'll have a number of traffic related projects around projects on the east side where developers will be footing the bill for new stoplights and widened intersections and different roadway configurations, which of course will free up money for the council to consider more bike lanes and those kinds of things in the future. So we really feel like we've gotten a lot of direction. In addition to that direction, in this particular era, we've had this city council and some of your predecessors have done a good job in creating policies and modifying the municipal code to really sort of outline how things would work. Once upon a time, if you wanted, there wasn't a defined process. If you felt like you needed a stop sign in your neighborhood or speed bumps on your street, it was just kind of, go to TNC and you can complain to them or complain to the city council, and if there's enough support for it, maybe something will happen or maybe it won't. Now there's an actual review process that's been put in place by the council, a policy that the staff follows all those guidelines as they work through. So it's just a much more defined era, and I think that's probably what's led us to have difficulty retaining and creating that satisfaction for our commissioners. As the council knows, I mean, we've talked about this issue for a number of years with this council. This council made a whole bunch of changes to how we recruit commissioners, creating alternates, creating a bigger, more flexible pool of commissioners, and I think that that's really done, it's really been beneficial to us in many ways, but unfortunately, it didn't help with this particular issue. And this particular commission has kind of continued to have the same sort of track record that it's had for a long time. I've heard, people ask, well, is it maybe the Public Works Director, the Public Works staff could work more? We've actually had 4 Public Works Directors who've had the same experiences and made the same recommendations. And I think we probably have had 9 or 10 council members who have, tried to add to trying to solve this problem. Right now, we're in a position where, based on resignations that we've had, people moving out of the area or changes in work or whatnot, we're down to just 1 out of the 5 commissioners we need on, so we don't even have the ability to have TNC meetings now. We have just 1 commissioner left. So it seemed like a good time to come forward and say, hey, perhaps now we should try something different. And we can always come back and recreate the Traffic and Circulation Commission. We obviously already have all the language available to us, so it wouldn't require any particular effort. But it's been, it's been difficult, and I think it's been kind of unfortunate for the staff, and knowing that we're working with commissioners who haven't had a lot of job satisfaction in being on the commission, and knowing that there just really wasn't a lot we could do about it. It's probably led us to try to just create almost busy work reasons to have commission meetings when there haven't been at times. And I think, when you do things like that, even though they're well-intended, sometimes it's a little transparent to folks that their role just hasn't been that important. And again, it's not that the function isn't important, it's just in terms of, how the business processes that we go through just don't lend themselves at this point to really having a very robust or active Traffic and Circulation Commission. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Jeff. I see Vice Mayor Reck and then Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Jeff, I think you answered one of my questions, was about sort of, reversing the decision. I guess I'd be curious, have you, in your experience, have you seen that happen in the past?
Have I seen
where you've sort of combined some of the transportation work here with planning, or I think you gave the example of Park and Rec and Cultural Commission kind of combining, and then have you seen instances where things have not worked and kind of we've needed to kind of reevaluate?
I haven't seen that here, but I have seen it happen in other communities. And I guess you could probably go back in time and make that argument. Once upon a time, in the 90s, there wasn't a Traffic and Circulation Commission. Probably, Councilmember Collins, when you were on the Planning Commission, you probably did serve that particular function. There aren't, the only reason you have to have a Traffic and Circulation Commission, and why we're not eliminating it, but rather designating those duties to the Planning Commission, is there are certain grant application processes that require them to be supported by the local Traffic and Circulation Commission. But in this case, that would also be the Planning Commission, so they would just carry that function. And like I say, that's something that we see all the time. But again, if it didn't work out in the future, and it could just be, one day when we have different council members and different staff members, and who knows what different issues will arise in the future when they have flying cars and things, it might make complete sense to bring it back. And those folks would probably wonder, well, why didn't we have one when in our particular era it made sense to combine it with the Planning Commission.
Okay, that's helpful. And sort of by combining it, and and I know you've said this, just sort of to clarify that, by combining it in with planning and the functionality, we retain the ability to get apply for those grants.
That's correct. They simply, their agendas would, like I don't know that our agendas how they appear anymore, but for years all your agendas read, San Carlos City Council and Redevelopment Agency, and so they would be the Planning Commission and Transportation Commission, and that's what their agenda would be. It doesn't mean every agenda might have, you might have a meeting where there aren't any Planning Commission items on and they have a TNC item, or vice versa. But they would be able to cover both functions.
Okay. And then just sort of as a quick follow-up, so we could add something, let's just say, for example, with this agenda item, just to say, maybe have staff sort of provide or have a review in 1 year to see if the work, I mean, we've got a lot of things coming on that we're expecting of planning in the next year. So to me, I'd be curious to sort of get a year snapshot out to say, you know, the workload for planning right now is way too much because we've got large developments coming on the east side. We have a lot. This is too much. This is sort of falling off. Is that something we could potentially add to this as an option?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to make sure that happens for
Is
you.
that and just sort of, and I'm going over my questions. Is that something we would need to make in the motion, or is that something that staff can just do? I just want to
I'd be happy to just commit to that, not only on annually, but I'd like to actually, since we have a good, strong, robust, that you all put in place, commission reporting system, that we ask them to make that one of the items that they report to you on, and then we'll do an actual council item on this a year from now, just to touch base and see how things are working.
Perfect. I'd be comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And yeah, thank you, Jeff. That was helpful background, and I appreciate kind of the long history on all of that. You know, it did strike me as, is this, you know, it's a curious time to consider this given so much coming between all the East Side projects, our, you know, implementation of the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, our new safe routes to schools. Is it because of all of this that you think it's a good time to do this, or should we pause and really think through what is that workload, and would we benefit from having that separate body because of that workload? Okay, like have you thought through that?
Well, I mean, I guess that always depends on your perspective and your individual thoughts, but we definitely have had a lot of conversation about that at the staff level. And again, it kind of goes back to where a commission or a council or a body is most effective really has to do with that planning phase, right? When you're doing the plan, that's where the input from the community and individuals is really key. When you're doing the project, that's where the technical engineers and the experts who are going to actually have to turn the plan into physical infrastructure becomes your primary, you know, really the primary driver of the project at that point. And you're not, you know, we've had instances, I think, was it last year or the year before, we had a project where we made tweaks very late in the process after it had been designed and bid and awarded, and that led to a lot of, you know, pretty significant issues that we were able to overcome and address. But that's not, you don't want to be collecting that feedback at the end. You want to be getting it at the beginning. And because we've done so many projects now, or planning projects, we've really got kind of, you know, sort of the heart of the community feedback agenda set. And now it's really just a matter of, you know, we're designing those projects. We're going to bid them, award them, build them. You know, the capital budget goes out 5 years. We've got projects going out 5 years. As you all know, I mean, streetscape improvement projects are very, very expensive. When we touch a street, it's not, you know, not just to do a bike lane or just to do asphalt anymore. We have to make ADA improvements and, you know, some oftentimes drainage improvements and other things to a project. So those dollars don't stretch as far as they did years ago, in addition to some of the commodity price and inflation pressures that we're seeing right now. So we kind of have our log of projects, and the council's sort of vision and planning for traffic improvements in the city, you know, goes out so far into the future that, you know, planning for new plans would be kind of a, you know, almost a waste of your time and effort if you know, are still working on implementing these plans. It would probably be better to hold off on a new plan until you get closer to being able to implement it into a reality, because, you know, things change. And, you know, I used to think when it came to traffic, we didn't see, you know, huge dramatic changes, but then things like, you know, Uber and Lyft and pandemics happen, and all of a sudden you realize, wow, well, okay, those things can really change in a significant way too. And, you know, so doing a plan, you know, on top of a plan is not the greatest in terms of seeing the implementation.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. So that's a lot of thinking on kind of the work of the commission, or what the planning commission would then do. But obviously the other component to a commission is being that hearing body for the public, and just having multiple occasions when the public can interact with something that's coming down is an additional opportunity, whether it's just scheduling or notifying, having it touch more than one commission, like first TNC and then planning and then perhaps us. It just, it's a larger envelope for public engagement. I guess my question would be how well attended by the public were the TNC meetings, and will they be missed? Or are we confident all of that will just naturally now show up at the planning commission meetings?
Well, I can only speculate here. In terms of attendance, I would say historically fairly lightly attended. But that's true of really most of our commissions. Planning Commission definitely can have some pretty huge meetings, but most of our commissions are fairly lightly attended. Our council meeting tonight is fairly lightly attended, although we're in a different era where we have a lot of people participating now remotely. So, and we know that in terms of the number of public comments per meeting we're getting, they're actually higher than the historical trend, and that's because of the Zoom feature and that remote ability to participate in home, which I certainly get. It's nice for people to be able to watch in the comfort of their own home while they're still able to do some of their own things instead of sit in this room for, sometimes 3 or 4 hours waiting for their item to come up that they want to talk about. So that's that. Whether or not, I'm sure there are people out there that all have their favorite, commission or council or board that might miss them. But in terms of the subject matter that I'm sure they care deeply about, that will, I'm sure, drive them to participate in, we typically see those people participate in public meetings, commission meetings, and council meetings. So we have a pretty, good record of those individuals who are really focused on certain subject matter of the city being able to participate and comment. So I have no doubt that will continue, and that all those opportunities, like I said, the number of meetings isn't going to change from a public perspective. It's just the venue.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Jeff, I have a quick question for you. Are we changing the name of the Planning Commission to the Planning and Transportation Commission, or is it just staying the same?
I think we're going to ask the Planning Commission to take a look at that as sort of a first way to get involved, unless you'd like to just direct that change. But I suspect that they probably, that's how other commissions have embraced this type of change in the past.
Very good. We can ask for council feedback during the discussion time on that. Any other questions? Seeing none, Crystal, is there public comment?
Yes, I have one in person and one via Zoom. Let me pull up my slide here. Okay, we'll go ahead and take in Zoom first. We have Karen Molinari. You can go ahead and unmute.
Sorry, that was hit by air.
Oh, okay, thank you. David Tusman, you have your hand up as well.
Hello, this is David Tusman, resident of San Carlos. I sent the council an email earlier, just quickly restate that. Thanks to the city manager for confirming that this will not risk us being ineligible for the regional grants. And I think I voiced the opinion of some other people that this is really disappointing that we don't have, that we're maybe eliminating a way for some more people to be directly involved in our community in a empowering way. I do understand that there's an ebb and flow. And I'm interested if there's some other way to delegate more work away from the council, like the city manager is talking, that we've evolved to be managing so many things directly. I think that even if the council is capable of doing this top-down, like heavily involved approach to every little thing, it is empowering and beneficial to allow community members to have power above like loose advisory or just getting fed the busy work, watching presentations that the manager had mentioned. And so I wonder if there is any precedent in other cities of a transportation committee like this having actual decision making or something a little bit closer to the planning commission, even though it's not required by state. It might be something to explore to help empower the community more. Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Okay, and we have Sonia Elks.
For taking my comment. I want to speak to what David Tusman just said. I thought he raised some excellent points. Perhaps in the community newsletter that goes out, the city council newsletter, it could reflect some of the issues that the community raised through public comment. I feel like a lot of really great public comments come from community members. When I hear them, but they never get out to the rest of the public through city council or through city channels, and maybe that's by design, but perhaps there's some value to the city being the conduit for community members to know how each other feels. It's just a thought. And the other thing I wanted to say is, as a very loyal attendee of Transportation Commission meetings for the past several years, I think I've only missed a handful. I look forward to only going to the Planning Commission meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. I appreciate that firsthand experience. Anyone else with us this evening who would like to make a public comment on this item? Come on up.
Hi, Brian McDermott, community member. And as a community member, I would like to have some say in what does take place as far as the Transmission TNC Commission does enact and allocate, especially towards bike lanes. I also feel that any entity that takes on too much on their plate tends to have cracks and misses important details, especially when it comes to safety like this. Delegating and having a third party overlooking it, I think, would be a good idea, and I think that would be a bit hasty to not do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any other public comment this evening?
No, there are no hands.
Okay, I'll open it up for council discussion. Councilmember Collins.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I apologize if I start sounding like the council historian, but I can tell you that too many years.
It's better than just the pool guy, though, Ron.
I wear a lot of hats, so I've been thinking so much I forgot to shave for 3 weeks. When I was on the Planning Commission, this was late 80s, early 90s. I think we only had 2 commissions. I think we had Planning and Parks and Rec, and 2 meetings a month, which I think is actually an advantage. You're talking about potentially about 20 meetings a year versus maybe half that for traffic and circulation. We handled the things that the Traffic and Circulation Commission handled. We handled the things that EDAC handles now. And so it didn't seem that much of a burden. Now, true, we didn't have a lot of the building that's going on now, but we were changing. The city was really changing. The downtown was changing. So we had a lot on our plate. We were also entertaining changes in house sizes. We just did that a few years ago. Well, that was really, I think, probably the 3rd or 4th time around. So we handled those things on the Planning Commission. I didn't feel like that it was, really a burden. It was just something that we handled. It also helped us in dealing with those issues because they were part of the context of all the other issues that we dealt with, whether they had something to do with a new commercial project or redevelopment of a particular area of town in terms of just residences changing, that sort of thing. We got input from schools. I think it's a natural function that the commission will handle well. And like Jeff says, if it doesn't work out, we can always recreate it. You know, I mean, Mark Olbert used to say, you know, the luxury of being on a council is that we can change our minds. And if things don't work, we can do something different. Really, though, for me, what sealed the deal for me was such poor attendance for the Traffic, Transportation Commission, with so many meetings canceled. That just pushes things back. You know, when you've got issues now, you want to come to a meeting, you know that there's always going to be at least 1 or 2 meetings a month for the Planning Commission, and I think that they will. I think they'll welcome that. So, and adding further to that argument is, I looked at the attendance of the Planning Commission. Not a single member of the Planning Commission missed a meeting for the last year. That was so impressive to me, you know, and we spent a lot of time as a council picking those members. And it shows how much the Planning Commission feels involved with the city. You know, that when I was on it, that was really the #1 commission. We worked closely with the council. They understood, or we understood what they wanted, and we worked hard to make sure that we handled the issues that were important to the council. And I think this is going to, if anything, elevate the profile of the commission. The other thing I thought of was that in those days we had no email, we didn't have any video of the meetings, obviously no social media. A lot of people, though, still came to the Planning Commission meetings when there was an issue that needed, that was important enough. But I will admit that there were Planning Commission meetings where literally no one showed up other than staff. But nevertheless, when the issues were important, we got public input. And now I think that people will, with all the ways that they have to have input, this will actually be addition by subtraction, for lack of a better term. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Ron. Well put. Councilmember Parmer Lohan.
Thank you. So I appreciate the public input on this, and also the desire for hyper focus on traffic and circulation. It's a priority of the council that we focus on this, and we do have quite a bit of development coming in, and so I appreciate Councilmember Collins' assessment of the data, because that's my take on it as well, that in this last quarter, 2 of the 3 meetings were canceled because lack of a quorum, and every quarter we get the report, it's the same story. Whereas the Planning Commission is right in the thick of reviewing big projects that are coming into the community, both residential as well as commercial. And given the focus on, and traffic is always an issue with any kind of development, and safety is also a key factor to that. So I appreciate the concern around this, but I feel like we're going to be moving into a place where people will know when they have something that comes up. They can catch it in 2 weeks' time at the furthest out, which I think is really great. In addition, this council has directed staff on multiple occasions with multiple of our big initiatives in the community to do lots of outreach to the community. So there's also not just Planning Commission, but there's also other channels, and I feel like this staff has created best-in-class ways to capture that input. I think on the Eastside Visioning plan, there was thousands of data points that were collected from the community and synthesized into a very clean document that helped us understand what the key issues were. And being able to do that deep dive assessment and then bring it back up into actionable items, I think, is a very efficient way to do that type of work, which is counterintuitive from a government body, right? We think of government as kind of slow, but I feel like we've actually accelerated the process through some of these innovations. So my ask would be that we do signal to the community that this change is being made by changing the name to Planning and Transportation Commission. I think that will make it super clear that that's where people can go. And then also communicate it broadly to the community, because we know that traffic and circulation are of top of mind, as well as bike and ped safety. And I think those were my key points. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate everybody's discussion on this tonight.
Okay, so, I'll chime in, and then I'll seek out some feedback from the council on changing the name this evening or leaving it up to the Planning Commission. I think I could go either way. I do think the name should be changed regardless to signify the change. I too want to thank the public, those who spoke here in person and online. I did hear the concerns about transparency, and I just want to, I want to just reiterate that I think that having, as Laura said, the meetings with the Planning Commission every 2 weeks will actually make the process more transparent. It will make our traffic and circulation issues move more quickly. I think that there are lots of opportunities to get involved. So although the Transportation and Circulation Commission might not exist anymore, there are lots of other commissions, including the Planning Commission, where those who seek to be a part of the process could certainly apply. I also noticed in the packet that it was mentioned there's 5 duties of the Transportation and Circulation Commission, and the Planning Commission already does 2 of them. So I see like there's been an inherent conflict probably since the day the code was written. So I think that making this change makes a lot of sense. I too am very cognizant of not overburdening our planning commissioners. I know Ron served and John served, and they are a very busy commission, and they do make a lot of decisions that don't ever come to council. They really are empowered to make a lot of decisions for our city, and they're doing a lot. So I think that 1-year review would be really helpful, just to make sure that we're not burning them out. So that's my feedback. Council Member Dugan, I see your light is on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate all the public input on this as well, and I definitely appreciate the long history of this from both Jeff and Councilmember Collins. That is helpful to think about it. And I will just recall from my time on the Planning Commission, the transportation and circulation issues seemed important, but they were always like not in the room, but yet, everyone in the room was concerned about them. So I actually think it might be beneficial to the actual review of the projects for the function to be combined. So I think I will support this this evening. And I think that's a great suggestion from Laura to just go ahead and make this name change. I think that's a good idea, just to signal to the community. And as was well said, it's important that the public knows where to come with these concerns and issues. So making that change, I think, would make it very clear. And I'd be open if the commission itself had a different thought on it, but I think starting off with Planning and Transportation Commission, I think that captures it. So I would support making that change this evening as well. Thank you.
Okay, I see no further hands raised. So we'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
I move to introduce ordinance number
1587.
1587, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos amending San Carlos Municipal Code, Chapter 2.24 Commissions by repealing Section 2.24.300 Transportation and Circulation Commission, removing reference to the Commission, and amending Section 2.24.140 Planning Commission Powers and Duties.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan, did you want to? Do we need to amend? Yeah. Oh, I see, Greg.
You would want to add that to the motion if the intention is to change the name.
And reflect the new name of Planning Commission to Planning and Transportation Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Crystal, could you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
And Mayor McDowell?
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll now move to our last item, agenda setting, consideration of agendizing an item to review fines and penalties for illegal fireworks. I'm not sure who brought this forward. Vice Mayor.
That's
Go
right,
ahead.
Madam Mayor. Thank you. I just think over the last couple of years, we've had some challenges around illegal fireworks throughout the city. I've had multiple conversations with the chief on it. I know they were fortunate enough to catch some of the individuals right before 4th of July, but I know last summer, or the summer before this one, it went on for months. It often goes on for a long time, and I know that some cities have reviewed their sort of ordinances in terms of fines, penalties, and I thought it might be appropriate for us so that we can get ahead of the game if we do want to do something before the 4th of July for next year to do that. I think Redwood City and maybe Half Moon Bay or a couple others have done the same. So I thought it would be a good time to raise this.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Feedback, let's see. What is the process? Where we kind of agree as a council to bring it back? Okay, I will agree. Councilmember Palmer Lohan?
Yeah, I'm in favor of this, and thank you, Vice Mayor Reck, for bringing it up. The one thing I'm wondering is, could we also look at a way for people to dispose of fireworks as part of this? Because without going into too much detail, a stick is good, but helping people figure out how not to have them in possession, because I sometimes wonder if they make their way into homes unbeknownst to the homeowner. Just a theory.
I'd be fine with that, having that being included as part of it.
Fireworks buyback? Yeah. I support taking a look at this. It's, I live with a bit up on the hill, and yeah, you start hearing these in May, and it's pretty constant through the whole summer. And the fire hazard being what it is, it's a little horrifying to think what all's being launched out there. So thank you, Adam. Appreciate you bringing it forward.
Adam, I appreciate your foresight too. I think this is a great idea to get ahead of the game. Okay, I see no other hands raised, so we'll go ahead and that direction has been given, and we will go ahead and adjourn.
No.
Sorry. Did any other agenda setting items?
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank the people who spoke during items not on the agenda with respect to Fix in San Mateo County, and I thought that they made some very clear and cogent arguments for the need for community oversight, and they invited us to take a study session, and in light of the fact that we do contract with the sheriff, and there's changes afoot in that area with the new leader coming in at the end of the year, I was just wanted to see what the council's will was for receiving a report or information, or what they call the study session from Fix in San Mateo County in future.
Vice Mayor Reck.
Got me before I could do it. Thank you, Councilmember Palmer Lohan, for bringing that up. So I heard what they had to say, and I have sort of lots of questions around it, and so that's where I'm not sure that a study session. I guess I'd like to, knowing that we have a new sheriff coming in, I kind of would like to hear from her. Get her feedback first. I'm fine to get a presentation on it. I don't know that I want to have a study session about kind of what, because she may be coming up with some ideas. I think there could be other oversight opportunities with the County Board of Supervisors. They may be looking at some things. So I'd want to look at a more holistic approach study session and hear from the new sheriff before doing anything along those lines. But I'd be open to, if the council wanted to hear a presentation from them, I'd be okay with that.
I'd like to disclose I've already met with Fix in San Mateo County. I had a one-on-one Zoom, and so I'm disclosing that, and it was a good way for me to get educated on what they were seeking. So that's another option. Councilmember Collins.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it to be for it or against it. I would favor a report to council rather than a full-blown study session. I would like to hear from our current sheriff and maybe the future sheriff. It's one of those things that really sounds like a good idea, but I don't know. I mean, if it's a great idea, every city would do it, every jurisdiction would do it, and I don't know that that is happening. So before we get too deeply into it, I'd like to just get more information. I can't think of a better way than just to report to council on it, unless somebody has a better suggestion.
Okay, it sounds like the will of the council is a report to council.
Can I just get a point of clarification on who the report is coming from? Because I got the sense that the request is for the group, Fixin San Mateo County, to make this report.
No, I would hope that we would get the report from, get the perspective of the sheriff's office before we move forward. I mean, the Fixin San Mateo County, they have a particular agenda. You know, this is what they want. And I don't know if what they want is the best for us. So I would like to get the perspective of law enforcement before we move forward. I mean, they're fairly well positioned. Yes, they have a viewpoint, and maybe they're for it, maybe they're not. I really don't know.
And are you looking to do that at a council meeting or individually? That was unclear to me.
I think it's probably up to the rest, everybody else. I'm happy to meet with the sheriff individually. I don't know how anybody else feels.
Yeah, I guess if I can jump in, maybe I would suggest what the mayor has done to sort of have a one-on-one meeting with Fix-It San Mateo County to get that perspective. And since we have a new sheriff coming in, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. So with that, I think that's fair to maybe sort of try to do those one-on-one meetings, and then as the new sheriff gets sworn in, we can try to meet with her, and maybe I'm assuming once she's in place, she's going to want to come talk to us officially as the sheriff, since we're a contract city, and maybe that could be part of that discussion in that presentation about any kind of oversight that she may be thinking about with the department.
Councilmember Palmer Lohan, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate everybody's perspective on this, and I just wanted. It sounded to me like it was very clear that the Fixin San Mateo County team wanted to make a presentation to us. So, again, depending on what the will of the council is, I just want to clarify. It sounds like that ask was really specific. So, but I appreciate if others have a different viewpoint. So, thank you.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would certainly support receiving a presentation from the group to hear about it. As far as us moving forward or taking any action, I just know our new sheriff ran on a platform of transparency and accountability, and I would certainly want to give her, the opportunity to take her chair and hear how she's going to put that into action before we got ahead of that in any way. But certainly happy to hear from this group and start thinking about it.
So I'm just wondering, maybe as a potential compromise, we could we can sort of agree to get. I'd like to hear from the sheriff first, the new sheriff, and then maybe do the presentation afterwards. To me, that seems that might be more productive at that point.
That was my thinking.
So I'm okay with doing it, but if we want to agree to do it, but postpone it till January after she's in office, I guess that's kind of how I would look at it and propose.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, I will agree with that as well, and I think council members are certainly open to reaching out to Fixin San Mateo County and getting a presentation. Okay, any other items on the agenda? All right, this meeting is adjourned.